The courage it takes to say, I want to study medicine, often goes unrecognized. But for medical school hopefuls, it's a defining moment whereby finally, everything makes sense. Every experience and lesson has led to this calling that is so often talked about, but as with the cruelty of all things needing to be balanced, we're immediately hit with a wave of worry. How am I going to convince the admissions committee that I want to be a doctor? How am I going to justify it when they slowly dissect each and everything I've done, finding any flaw to burst my dream bubble? And well, that problem is presented by the portfolio. It's the blank canvas that we're told gives us free rein to paint our story, but deep down suspect that there are specifics they're looking for. To make things worse, we start to believe that there's actually a right and wrong way to build a portfolio. You see, this was a soul-crushing realization I had 3 years ago when I first told my teacher I wanted to apply to medical school. Although students do get in every year, people from my academic track do not make up the majority. So when I discovered that, it quickly sunk in that I had to be perfect to stand a chance. And that was my first mistake, thinking that there was a perfect portfolio. In hindsight, I think that this problem was rooted in my constant desire to seek out successful candidates, analyzing what they did, hoping to emulate aspects of their portfolio to maximize my chances of success. In my mind, there was a perfect medical school candidate. I mean, it made sense at the time because good grades are only a prerequisite and does not guarantee admissions. If X did A and Y did A, surely I must do A to even stand a chance of getting in. And the more I researched, the more I noticed trends and this nagging feeling that I needed to do more, that I needed to live up to what they did. This eventually manifested as an action plan that was entirely based on what others did. Filled with this false sense of purpose, I met up with my teacher and asked if there was anything missing in this plan, if there was a magic sauce, if there was a secret ingredient to the Krabby Patty. But instead of entertaining this frankly silly notion, she instead asked me a simple 4-word question, and this completely changed the way that I built my portfolio, it changed my outlook on everything, and honestly inspired this video. And that 4-word question was, what is your story? You see, it's the simplicity of the question that makes such an impact. All this time, I'd been thinking about this imaginary perfect medical student, but failing to recognize that the only common thing that they did was share their story, their personal story, their unique story. Each experience they put down wasn't a check in a box. Instead, it was an experience that led them to learn more about themselves, leading towards a career in medicine. They didn't do volunteering for the sake of doing volunteering. They did it because they learned an important lesson in serving someone, something that connects them to the heart of humanity, to the heart of medicine. And so if I wanted to pursue medicine, I cannot be focused on repeating aspects of their story, but instead should be finding my story and through my portfolio, demonstrate my journey to medicine and present it to the admissions committee as a cohesive picture. And as for my story, there are 2 reasons for why I want to pursue medicine. The first, for the responsibility that accompanies the trust that someone has in you when you take care of their health. And the second, for the close proximity you have to someone during their most vulnerable and difficult times. So only when I could start to share this story courageously did my portfolio start to make sense. Did it become a springboard of which I could launch into my 2 core reasons for wanting to pursue medicine and relate my experiences and build my portfolio entirely around that. I found that the responsibility aspect was tied to leadership, and me naturally gravitating towards leadership positions, wanting to lead initiatives and contribute to better the community around me. I learned how much I enjoy working in teams for my 2 years serving in the student council as a secretary and treasurer. I had the chance to collaborate and lead various welfare events, freshman orientation, graduation, donation drives, interaction games. I could relate this to medicine as healthcare today is delivered in multidisciplinary teams, whereby each member contributes with their own expertise, contributing towards the best patient care. And as a bonus, I also learned the logistical considerations of putting on events, which directly led to 2 other leadership roles I served on. The first was a society that I founded which aimed to harness the power of speech through debate, poetry and public speaking, and this was such an exciting frontier because I'd approached my teacher with the idea after attending a seminar, of which I noticed other youth leaders around me, confident, articulate, and able to inspire their peers through their ideas. So I wanted to learn more about this alongside members that were equally passionate about this. This experience taught me a whole bunch about resilience, as the early days of the society were tough, pitching the society to school administration, gaining the trust of members to believe and commit to the society. But I also believe that the resilience and rapport building would be important to me because it is absolutely vital in medicine to have a good doctor-patient relationship. And the other leadership role was a school-based mental wellness initiative that I started with a couple of friends, and it really pushed me to develop communication because it started during my internship period whereby we were all going through an adjustment of going from school to working life and the responsibilities that came with it, and as such we really needed clear and concise communication to ensure that we were able to meet our weekly objectives. I felt very strongly about this project because we were supported by both YMCA Korea and Singapore, and we were also given a grant from Kukming Bank Korea. So this heightened sense of duty to ensure and remind ourselves that everything we were doing was for a greater purpose. And I took this motif towards my service roles, whereby really everything that we did can have a good impact on someone else. And it was through my service roles that I fully recognized the privilege it is to be led into someone's life, them trusting you as you accompany them along their journey. This formed a core reason for wanting to study medicine, as it allows you to close proximity to someone during their most vulnerable moments. Probably the most impactful was a cancer guidebook project, of which an oncologist classmate and I would record cancer survivor stories and share them with new patients to encourage them. And as my role as an interviewer, I find myself reflecting on many occasions of the emotional conversations that I had with these survivors on the challenges and difficulties of treatment and the changes that it had to everyday life, but it all really inspired me on their bravery and courage it took for them to just push through no matter what was presented to them. And this really taught me a lot about healthcare and how much of a paramount role a doctor has. Each survivor was recounting how the doctor pushed them and inspired them and helped them along each step of the way. And this part about being with someone on their journey, helping them, is something that I really resonated with and what I brought over as my role as a volunteer teacher. I primarily worked with underprivileged children, hoping to improve their reading and comprehension through weekly lessons. I can't begin to describe how heartwarming it was to see the smiles of the children as they begin to fall in love with reading, and the immense pride they had when they got a question correct. And it really exemplified that when helping someone, it often takes going the extra step, helping and understanding them, relating to them beyond their present struggles. This is so similar to healthcare, where you aim to cure but always seek to comfort. I also took on various roles as a health advocate. The first were 2 different elderly befriender roles that seek to deal with the increased prevalence of chronic disease, and through interactions with the elderly, help them to increase their healthy food consumption and increase their frequency of exercise. And this journey with the seniors really exposed me to the many practicalities of making lifestyle changes, be it familial or financial issues. They both have very real consequences, and it's our duty as the person trying to help them to really listen to them and understand the situation. And the second was a public health advocacy program, and it was actually hosted by My Dream Medical School. It was through this program that I got to visit the campus for the first time, to appreciate the amazing student culture as we were interacting with the public. It highlighted the incredible responsibility to ensure that everything was factual, something that all doctors face. However, it also came with an immense amount of joy seeing how happy the public was that the medical students were giving free public screenings, and this made me realize how much I wanted to give back, and I can't wait to serve in the capacity of a medical student. And there was a final category that I loosely like to call interesting. It embodies the sparkles that I tried to give my portfolio to make myself more memorable and hopefully help me stand out a little more. The first was the incredible honor I had to work on a research manuscript during my internship at the Skin Research Institute of Singapore under A*STAR. And through this experience, not just being in the lab, I got to appreciate the amazing interconnectors between research and the clinical care, and how they're so dependent on one another, how research focus is dependent on clinical care, and how clinical care informs research focus. The next was a student organization I was a part of, whereby senior students give back to junior students, and the point of this organization was to write helpful guides that would help students along on their academic journey, especially during internships and more unfamiliar parts of the academic journey. Through this experience, I got to put myself in someone else's shoes, understand their problems from their perspective, and trying to appreciate that and write for them in a way that may possibly help them. And the final of the 10 activities I put down was YouTube. Yeah, YouTube. Such a bizarre thing to put down in your medical school portfolio, but despite that, I know it's really weird. YouTube did teach me a lot. It taught me about public speaking and communication, ensuring that my thoughts were conveyed in an easy to understand manner. It also improved my time management and organization, ensuring that a video goes out every single week for 1.5 years. And to an extent, it showed my artistic side and initiative, learning videography and editing from the ground up with no prior experience. And even with such a bizarre activity like YouTube, all I ever wanted was for my portfolio to show my journey. From learning about the joys of being a team member and becoming a leader, to the meaningful moments I had with cancer survivor and kids, they all were part of my journey that represents who I am, my values, and the type of doctor and medical student I want to be. This is the way I recommend you build your medical school portfolio, one that is representative of what you've done and the experiences that led you towards medicine. Even today, when I've been accepted to my dream medical school, I still don't know if my portfolio was stereotypically good. But that doesn't really matter to me, because What mattered to me was that it represented why I wanted to study medicine. So as you stare down that blank canvas of a portfolio, I implore you to completely throw away any notions of a perfect portfolio, as it doesn't exist. Instead, I ask you to simply start by writing your story that you so courageously found. Because honestly, the best and most successful portfolio is the one that truly and wholeheartedly represents what is your story. I hope that this video helps you to build your medical school portfolio so that you can bawl your eyes out when you finally get your acceptance letter, just like I did in this video right here. So see you there.